To the Ideas into Action panel. Today we have four lovely individuals joining us to share their experiences as entrepreneurs. If each of you could briefly introduce yourselves to our audience, that would be wonderful. So I'd like to start with Cristal.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Envision 2020. I'm super excited to be here with you and the other panelists. My name is Cristal Hines. I am an RU alumni. And I did social work for my undergraduate, bachelor's in social work. I'm now working as a case manager for youth and criminal justice with Young Street Mission Toronto. And aside from that, I have a consulting business where I support individuals and organizations build on their equity, anti-racism strategies and really implement them into practical mechanisms to support those kind of frameworks, as well as small businesses. And I engage in a lot of different grassroots community organizing around pushing back against systemic anti-Black racism and various structures and systems and supporting individuals. But I'm really happy to be here. Leadership is very important to me. It has acted as a catalyst for a lot of work that I've done and continue to grow and evolve in. And so looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much. Wilson, would you like to go next?
Oh, you're on mute.
That would help, right? Hi, everybody. Great to be here with all of you today. My name is Wilson Leung, and I'm the director of the Graduate Leadership Institute for the Yates School of Graduate Studies at Ryerson. So I work with master's and PhD students to help build leadership capacity. Outside of Ryerson, I'm also the director of leadership for a marketing communications company. So I work with lots of employees and executives, again, to help bring up and help them reach their potential in leadership. Outside of that, I'm also the co-founder of a charity called Thinking Forward, and we offer anti-bullying character education for inner city schools for the TDSB. Great to be here with you today.
Awesome, thank you so much. Kevin, if you'd like to go next. You're also muted, so just, please unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Kevin Louis. I'm a UBC grad in marketing, and I did some work in with corporate in Adidas in Germany. Later worked for small businesses in logistics, food manufacturing, and perfume distribution. Currently, I own a small business with my fiance called Pointheim. We specialize in online. We're an online retailer, manufacturer, distributor, and wholesaler of custom stationery and planners. It's great to have you guys here, and I'm happy to be here to speak today.
Thank you. And Jessica, if you'd like to go next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Ketwaroo-Green. I am a graduate of Ryerson's Bachelor of Arts program. My major was politics and governance. While I was at Ryerson, happy to participate in a couple different leadership opportunities. So was heavily involved with Ryerson Women in Leadership. I was a cross-country athlete at some point or the other. And I was also involved with the RSU and amongst a whole bunch of other things. So definitely leadership, I think, as you know, the panel has already sort of touched on, is definitely a big part of my journey. Since graduating almost 3 years ago, I've since started working in the policy and advocacy space with the Women Abuse Council of Toronto, doing research and policy writing. I also volunteer with the Canadian Women's Chamber of Commerce as their director for advocacy and public policy. But I also like to, in my spare time, focus on running my business, which is a consultancy focusing on gender equity and anti-Black racism, or looking at the experiences of racialized women. And I work with a variety of clients to build out solutions to addressing such things, host a lot of presentations, workshops, and advocacy work. So yeah, that's sort of my background and my experience. Looking forward to our discussion this afternoon.
Thank you so much for the awesome introductions. We're super excited to have you all joining us today. Let's jump right into the questions. So firstly, tell us about your leadership journey. What are you most proud of? And either I can call on each of you, or if you would just like to chime in, you can do that. But I'll start with Cristal, if if you want
I'm getting picked on today. No worries, no worries. Yeah, so my leadership journey, I want to say, really and truly started when I was young. You know, I was always that kid that stood out from the crowd, didn't follow the rules, did my own thing, was always carving out various paths. But more clearly defined was in grade 10. I started to engage due to a variety of different reasons in more leadership oriented and pursuing initiatives and leading initiatives, and really not to get into the extensive detail of my background story, but as a result of my background story, during that season of my life, I was one of very few Black girls in an predominantly white school. And so my leadership really, a catalyst of it was a desire for self-actualization and survival, and wanting to carve out spaces that were more accessible and made me feel, nurtured a culture where myself and other Black students who didn't see themselves represented could not only navigate the school, but actually thrive and feel successful. And so I ran a series of initiatives around Black History Month, different programming, and that launched out, and then I started being called upon for other schools to duplicate the same kind of programming. And then that trajectory just spun off when I started off at Ryerson. I got right involved in student organizing and student leadership as the a liaison for Ryerson Social Work Student Union. I later became the co-president, went to work in the RSU, was also involved in Ryerson Women in Leadership, and there just learned a huge peripheral of experiences, knowledge, and connected with other leaders that helped to shape my leadership journey.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. Wilson, if you'd like to go next.
Absolutely. So my path to my journey isn't very linear. So I've had a few different careers in my life. And at one point, I actually used to be in church leadership. And I used to have a mentor at that time who I would say initiated me into leadership. And what I mean by that was they took the time to encourage me and affirm me in terms of my leadership giftings. And so, you know, every week without fail, we would go through a chapter of a leadership book together. And I got the awesome privilege to ask my mentor, you know, any question, you know, that I wanted to in terms of leadership. And he was very open and transparent and shared, you know, often all of the, you know, struggles that he was going through as well. And I thought that was amazing. But what amazed me even more was that he started asking me questions about leadership. And I said, you know, hold on a second here. You're so much further advanced in leadership than I am. You know, how come you're asking me questions? And I realized that he just had such a humble attitude and such a like a lifelong learning attitude that really impacted me. And so I knew that at that time, I started developing these seeds of passion for leadership development, wanting to grow myself as a leader, but also wanting to help others grow into their leadership as well. And so I honestly wouldn't be, you know, on this, you know, virtual call today if it wasn't for his influence in my life. And so, you know, for me, it's really changed the trajectory of my life. And so the things that I'm involved with now just allow me the opportunity to give back and to be able to help others in terms of their development as well. And I would say that has been, you know, such a meaningful and purposeful journey for me.
So much for sharing. Kevin, if you'd like to go next.
Yeah, just like Wilson said, my leadership journey has definitely not been very linear. It's been very jumping left and right, starting from being leader, a small leader in high school and in school clubs through university, and then eventually I joined a student as a student orientation leader for incoming students to the school. That definitely helped me build my create the foundation for my leadership journey. Later on, I think what was really what I was really changed my mind was when I was at Adidas and they gave me I was just a 20-year-old intern. They allowed me to lead a small team of different other managers to debug this footwear costing software that we were developing in prototype, to find out all the little issues. And while I was just a 20-year-old intern, I was able to make my first attempt at leadership and taking on bigger roles. And after we finished that project, that really allowed me to bring those skills out of that project and progress further, knowing that we can take these skills and apply it to all big and small tasks alike. And that definitely has helped in the journey. And I feel like that's the most proud moment I have, because it's been able to help me whether it's working in corporate or working in small business or on my small business.
Jessica, would you like to go?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that kind of similarly to Wilson and Cristal, that my leadership journey has really been tied into community organizing. And I was able to sort of find my place in leadership once recognizing where I wanted to go and what type of groups I wanted to be connected to, but more so, what was my bigger mission or what my bigger purpose was. And so once I found that, I felt like I was in a better position or more comfortable to actually be or act as a leader. I think before that, I didn't necessarily see myself or would define myself as a leader. And even more so, I probably would have defined leader as somebody who was a manager. And so I wasn't actually exposed to what other leadership could be or look like until after finding community organizing, finding a mission, finding a purpose in the gender equity space. That's where I became a lot more comfortable in defining myself as a leader, taking on new projects, starting new things, because I felt myself reflected in a lot of these issues. And so that's really where my leadership journey started. I also started in high school doing organizing, was supported by a lot of teachers. As I mentioned at the top of the discussion, I've been involved in a whole bunch of things at Ryerson while I was there, which is great, and it definitely helped to sort of bolster my experience as being a leader and what being a leader looks and feels like for me. I think at the end of my career journey at Ryerson, what I really left with was my own way of how I wanted to be a leader and defining that. And for me, it was about being a servant leader. So how can my leadership support other people? How can my leadership grow other people? How can my leadership and my work be able to advance other people's either professional or personal growth? And for me, that was a huge sort of reflection or realization in learning about what kind of leadership I was putting out in the world, and helped me define my own voice in these conversations, because there are lots of people who still unfortunately equate leadership with management and don't understand the difference between the two, and also helped me realize that I didn't necessarily have to be have a fancy title or of a leader or a manager, or acted in that capacity or have that title to then act in that capacity. I think after my work with Ryerson, I realized whether I'm, as Kevin mentioned, an intern, whether I'm a volunteer, whether I founded my own business, the principles of leadership that I learned throughout my sort of undergraduate career, I realized that they could be applied anywhere. And that was sort of a big piece in my leadership journey.
Much for sharing. I do realize that we have a little over 10 more minutes left, so I'm just gonna skim through a few of the questions because I feel like you've kind of answered some of them, and I'm gonna jump to, have any of you faced any obstacles or barriers throughout this journey, and how did you overcome these? And we can either go to Cristal, or if anybody else would like to chime in. I don't want to pick on you, but yeah, whatever works.
I'll just jump in there. Absolutely. So I've had, my share of obstacles and barriers, and, like many of you, I'm sure, things, having to deal with things like failure, having to deal with things like fear, things like that, disappointments and setbacks. I think these are common to the human experience, and more so than that, common among leadership experiences as well. And how, in terms of overcoming, one of the things that I guess over the years I've learned is this idea of reframing, reframing aspects where if something has been difficult or painful or challenging, don't waste that. Don't waste that experience. Yes, it might have been unpleasant, and you might not have asked for it, and you wish it had maybe gone differently, but I think that there is learnings that can come out of that. There is growth that can happen. There's insights that can be developed. So I think just reframing your experiences that that might have been unpleasant or hurtful or setbacks. How can you see it in a different light? and how can you continue to grow, in terms of your leadership through that. So that would be, something that I would share in terms of some obstacles and what I did.
I think that's great, Wilson. Sorry, I'm just going to jump in here and add on that, because absolutely, I think even as being a young leader at Ryerson, particularly when I was the president of Ryerson Women in Leadership, I had huge failures, which I was so embarrassed by. And I never really talk about them because I like to, as a lead, you expect your leaders to know everything and do everything right the first time. But reframing has definitely been one of those things that I've jumped onto, and so I wholeheartedly agree. The other thing for me is I'm a very results oriented, but also solutions driven person. So once I realize what the issue is, I want a solution immediately. And being a leader, part of it is recognizing that you don't know everything. And so who do I then reach out to be able to support me when those failures do exist, when I need a solution to a problem, when I want to rethink a strategy. And for that, I've turned to mentors. And I have a whole wide range of mentors. Kareem Bardisi, who is the co-founder of the Ryerson Leadership Lab, one of them, shout out to Kareem, but he and others really helped me see things in a different way. And I think helped me understand or work through barriers. When I was first starting out, I was like, a mentor, like what are they gonna provide? Like, oh, I know, you're young and you're stupid, you think you know everything. But yeah, I think mentorship has actually been one of those really big and key aspects for me, and not only having one mentor but a whole bunch of mentors to help me work through things and problems and situations and such.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in. Oh, was someone gonna jump in? Okay, I'll jump in there, Jess, because totally, I have to shout out Kareem as well. We share that mentor, and it's interesting. The inception of our relationship was so unique, and we've grown and evolved since then. But Kareem has definitely shaped a lot of my understanding in terms of leadership and strategy and things of that nature. But I think if I were to consolidate all of the obstacles that I have encountered as a leader, I do it in imposter syndrome. You know what I mean? Especially when we talk about failure, especially naturally. And I think Wilson said this and Jess touched on this also, is like, as a human, we already doubt our capabilities in so many ways. It's a humanistic feature of who we are as humans. But then again, talking about what I said earlier, as a Black woman in leadership and recognizing the inherent inequities that come with the environments that oftentimes we navigate within, imposter syndrome. And for those of you who are not familiar with the terminology, imposter syndrome is ultimately feeling like a fraud, feeling like at some point you're going to be exposed as a fraud. You second guess your capabilities, you doubt your accomplishments, you tell yourself that this isn't me, this was a fluke. And I think the more effective I became in my work and my leadership, the more the expansion of imposter syndrome just began to plague my everyday. And so some practical things that I did to overcome them was I definitely have mentors for every area of my life. But prior to that was really going on a deeper spiritual journey. And like Wilson, I also was heavily involved in church leadership. And so going on that intentional journey and doing the kind of inner work and self-work and asking yourself some of those critical questions, having mentors and people around you who are able to help you dissect some of the underpinnings to your insecurities, and then better frame that to effectively inform your leadership trajectory. And something I also say is understanding within whatever your definition of leadership is, that you understand it's not a position, it's very much a heart posture that informs your everyday actions, right? And it's something that, and when you position it that way, then you recognize that it's not static, but it's always growing, it's always evolving, and that you need to be subject to the discomfort that comes with sometimes being in the spotlight, but then knowing when it's time to retreat so that you can rejuvenate, take down some of those critical lessons and regrow as a leader.
I think adding on to what everyone has said so far, I would say that the leadership journey is definitely not linear, and the challenges that I've faced were definitely the same as what you all faced, like the fear and the concern for failure. We are always pre-programmed in our minds from school, from primary school, high school, university, that everything is very linear. You would go from grade to grade. When you get a job, you go up one level at another level, you get promoted, so on and so forth. But the leadership journey for me, and I'm sure for many of you, has definitely been hasn't been anything like that. You go left and right, you try this and you try everything, and all these little key components are what help you build your foundation to leadership and overcome these obstacles, whether it's consulting with mentors, going through failure and accepting failure and taking those as learning opportunities, and kind of how I didn't really have many mentors to ask all these questions, these tough questions, but how I overcame these obstacles was through small failures and allowing myself to dig deeper and deeper into roles by taking in failures and small successes and gradually increasing risk and growing from there.
Mm-hmm. I'm so sad we have such short amount of time left, but I am going to end off with one last question for all of you. Do you have any words of advice for students who are seeking to gain leadership skills but don't know where or how to start?
I would say just start. I honestly, there is so much information out there, and we have so much access to leadership resources and content, more than ever before, probably in human history, right? Just the accessibility to it, so I would say read something, watch something, listen to something. You can just Google leadership. You'll find, a number of articles, websites. You can go onto various YouTube channels and watch, different, webinars, listen to podcasts. If you type in Graduate Leadership Institute, Ryerson, you'll also see a number of leadership videos that we've put together that, are touch on different leadership themes, and then you can explore those as well. I would say also, and we had mentioned this word before, but mentoring. So, talk to people, ask them that, hey, is it okay if I just, have a coffee chat with you just to kind of pick your brain? I want to get some advice. These days it's a bit hard in the pandemic. Maybe it's a virtual coffee, but I think the most important thing is having a lifelong learning attitude, that you're just going to continue to soak things in, continue to grow and develop. And like we said before, even things like failure, life experiences, you can learn from these things as well. So just embrace that lifelong learning attitude, and that will really help you.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. I was going to say the exact same thing in terms of showing up. I think a lot of people fall into analysis paralysis, where they do so much research or they see so many different things, and they're like, okay, I don't know where to start and what to do, but literally just show up, whether it's to an event, whether it's to an initiative, whether it's to a conversation, and take the learnings, educate yourself, do more research, and repeat. You know what I mean? I think the greatest thing here is to recognize that it is a process. There is no perfect template to leadership. It has been, people have researched it, they've studied it, they've done the most, and still we are coming up with different definition every day, because leadership is intrinsic to the human experience. And so I would say just go to events. Don't be afraid to connect with individuals through your LinkedIn network, through Instagram, your professors after class. One of the organizations I have now is My Sister's Keeper, and it's an intergenerational and interdisciplinary mentorship hub. And that's what we focus on, is facilitating these connections, but also teaching individuals that you have as much autonomy and skill set and expertise to bring to the table as the person that you admire and are looking up to. And it's about initiating a conversation to begin that leadership and relational journey. And so show up and show out.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with both Wilson and Cristal. I think an emerging theme from this panel, or at least one that I see, is that leadership is different for each and every one of us, and that there's no set definition. And because of that, we can't tell you how to get started. You have to be able to define how you want to get started, whether that's really small and it's, maybe you take a leadership in a group project. Whether you go out to an event, whether you start something, whether you run for office, like there are so many different ways for you to be a leader and act as one, but it's up to you to decide, A, what that leadership looks like for you, and then B, how you want to be a leader. As Cristal mentioned, leadership has been tried, true, and tested. People have studied it. I've taken coursework on it. And while they do help to give you a framework at the end of the coursework that I've done on leadership, they all tell you the same thing, and the same thing that all three of us thus far have spoken about, and the whole panel has spoken to, is you have to start. You have to try, because the way that you approach things or you see the world will always be different from somebody else, and so your leadership will always be crafted around that. And so again, you can start small, you can start big, but the most important part is to take a step forward, and then define what leadership really looks like and feels like for you.
I wanted to add on a little bit to that. And yeah, like everyone said, you just got to get started. Once you get started, it's great. After you leave this conference, you're going to get started. You're going to Google leadership. But I think the second most important thing I would say is to repeat and rinse and repeat, and always keep continuing with these leadership opportunities, taking on more and more of these opportunities. Taking on the one after this conference will be great. It's a great first step, but make sure you keep repeating that, because it's all the learning opportunities in leadership that make you a more powerful leader and a more successful leader.
So that brings us to the end of our panel. Thank you so much to all our panelists for such an amazing and insightful session. Attendees, please take a few minutes to provide us with your feedback on the session by clicking on the button below that says Rate Session. Remember that by filling out feedback forms today, your name will be entered into a gift card draw, and we will now be heading over to our lunch and DJ session. See you all there. And once again, thank you so much to all our panelists. I hope you have a lovely rest of the day. Take care.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you very much. Take care.
Everyone.
Bye.